So we are doing the 12:45 session now, that obviously we've all gone off and had lunch and recovered. So Dr. Stelzner is going to talk to us. He's already spoken about anatomy, and he's going to be talking to us about surgical anatomy in the rectum from above and below. Thank you.
Okay. Dear chairpersons, dear ladies and gentlemen, it is again a pleasure and honor for me to speak to you about anatomy as a surgeon. And as I have said before, all these investigations were done in collaboration with Professor Thiel Wedel from Kiel. And I am further indebted to a group that looks after functionality in colorectal surgery, and you can see the name listed there. Rectal anatomy in relation to surgery means perirectal anatomy. And I would like to focus on two topics, on the nerves and on the fasciae. Let's start with the nerves. This is the pelvic side wall anatomy as we have seen and spoken about for many, many years. This is a female specimen with the sacrum on your right side, symphysis on your left side, legs are down here. The mesorectum has been removed as in TME surgery, and you look onto the right pelvic side wall. The hypogastric nerve is coming from above, and the pelvic splanchnic nerves from below. They form the pelvic or inferior hypogastric plexus, and there are branches running towards the rectum, also called or known as the T-junctions. But lower down, especially in relation to the anus and the internal anal sphincter, there has largely been a white spot over the years. And that was what we investigated only recently in Kiel. And the hypothesis was that the internal anal sphincter quite certainly has some kind of modulation. In the end of the day, it's an independent muscle with its own myogenic tone, which is generated by a Rho ROCK kinase and bound to a light chain myosin, to a lightweight myosin chain. And it is inhibited via the rectoanal inhibitory reflex coming from neurons from the rectum via the intrinsic pathway of the Meissner's plexus and is bound to nitric oxide. But there are situations when the tone of the internal sphincter is enhanced during concentrated work, like a surgeon, during sexual activity, and there are occasions where it seems not to work, in stage fright or in flight and fight states. So the hypothesis was that there must be autonomic nerves supplying the internal anal sphincter. And we again did an anatomical dissection. This is a male hemipelvis. The sacrum is on your left side, symphysis on your right side. This is the prostate, with the urinary bladder above and the seminal vesicles. And again, we did a TME-like dissection. There is the smooth surface of the mesorectum, and removed the inner lamella of the parietal pelvic fascia, giving access to the autonomic nerves. And we also opened up the intersphincteric space to have an idea how the structures relate to each other down there. And again, there's the hypogastric nerve, the pelvic splanchnic nerves, the pelvic plexus, and down there we could find nerve fibers that penetrate the longitudinal smooth muscles of the anorectal junction, and we named them internal anal sphincter nerves. Just to prove their nervous origin, we did some histologic and immunohistologic stainings, and just as proof of principle, the hypogastric nerve was nerve tissue, the pelvic splanchnic nerves, and we could depict the ganglion cells of the pelvic plexus. And lower down, we also found nervous tissue within these bundles. So we could at least characterize nerve fibers that derive from the neurovascular bundle. In anterior direction, there's the cavernous nerve, and to the medial direction, there are nerves towards the internal anal sphincter. And to relate it to surrounding structures, you have got the rectum there. It's in this area bare of mesorectum, which tapers and finishes just above this level. There's the levator ani muscle, and in this region, these structures become rather dense. There is no self-opening plane, and these kind of nerves run on the anterolateral surface of the rectum, if you want to put it like this. This is the initial female specimen with the vagina in front, and in this anterolateral triangle of the rectum run the internal anal sphincter nerves. This is a scheme to summarize our findings. You see the pelvic plexus here with its contributories and fanning out nerves to all these anterior pelvic organs, the neurovascular bundle with the cavernous nerve, and the internal anal sphincter nerve running towards the internal anal sphincter. And we are convinced, in a clinical sense, that damage of these kind of nerves has got something to do with low anterior resection syndrome. That is the view from the other side. After removal of the rectum, the mesorectum, you can again see the pelvic plexus and these nerves coming from its anterior inferior corner and running towards the internal anal muscle. And if you look at the anal sphincter complex, they penetrate the longitudinal muscle fibers just at the forming of the conjoint longitudinal muscles. So they arrive on the surface of the pubococcygeal muscle and go towards the internal anal sphincter. Well, that is concerning the nerves. When we dissected the nerves, we came across another phenomenon. This is the view from above. Legs are up here, the body is down there. This is the surgeon's view. There's the rectum, the abdominal wall has been removed. You can see the epigastric vessels, and this is the TME plane, the retrorectal or holy plane, where we start TME kind surgery. But when we dissected the nerves, especially the superior hypogastric plexus and the hypogastric nerves, we came across a phenomenon that you could lift up a whole plate of fascial structure, which represents the parietal pelvic fascia, and which contains these nerves in between two lamellae. And if you do not take care when entering this area during rectal surgery, you can end up in this space, we call the presacral space, with a fascial structure covering the median sacral vessels there, and we named it presacral space, and this fascial covering the presacral fascia. And if you enter there, it is quite obvious. It is, to start with, hardly to distinguish from the retrorectal space, and you can destroy all the autonomic nerves that lie now in front of you or of your dissection plane. And we have elaborated on that a little bit more in detail. This is again a male specimen, legs on your left side, sacrum and trunk on your right side, and again the mobilized rectum in a TME-like fashion. And then we lifted up this parietal pelvic fascia with the hypogastric nerve running in within, and we took out a piece of tissue just to look at it under the microscope, and what you can see, many nerve bundles as you would expect, some blood vessels, and these structures were covered from either side by a fascial structure which we classified as the inner and the outer lamella of the parietal pelvic fascia. And if you look a little bit more in detail of it, then we have got this inner lamella, the outer lamella, and behind the two there is this presacral fascia I spoke of before, and behind this there are running the median sacral vessels. So this is important, especially if we later come from below. So this is the second summary. We can now depict our nerves ensheathed by the parietal pelvic fascia with an inner and outer lamella. And what we need to do if we do proper TME surgery, we need to find the right space just on the surface of the mesorectum and leave the inner lamella and all these other structures alone. But further down, in the posterior midline, these structures merge to a connective tissue band which stretches out from the sacrum, in this case from the fourth sacral vertebra, and runs in the direction of the rectum. And this has been named the sacrorectal ligament, and as far as I know, in the English-speaking country, this structure is referred to as Waller's fascia. We found it in various specimens being very highly variable, coming as high as from S2, and as you can see in this specimen, it has good 2 strands. And it is important to define it against the holy plane, because if you come down this area with the preparation from above, then you have to cut this ligament on the surface of the rectum to finish the proper TME down there and not run into the rectum and get onto the muscle tube and produce a inferior quality of the specimen. So these are the strands of the sacrorectal ligament. And now we look from below. We change our view, and I will only refer to transanal TME for the sake of time. That was put up by the working group I introduced in the beginning of the presentation, and we did this kind of preparation in the anatomy lab. So the view is now like this from below, with the anal sphincter and the urethra in front and the sacrum and the coccyx down there. Transanal TME means that you put in some kind of a platform through which you can do a minimal invasive procedure. And of course, the range of freedom is limited by this pivot, and it is necessary to be aware of anatomical pitfalls in this area, and I would like to go through 4 of them. The first one is the relation of the rectal wall to the prostate and the urethra. Again, there's a male specimen, self-explaining symphysis there, sacrum down there's the urinary bladder, is a catheter in the urethra, and if you come from this area, then the axis of your platform runs into the direction of the prostate. And if you are not aware of this angle, then it is quite easy to bridge this little space between the outer rectal wall and the urethra and run into problems with opening the urethra. This is the view you get in the anatomical specimen. This is anterior. There is the rectum with the mesorectum around, and the prostate with the urethra is just behind there. and you need to be cautious not to advance too much in that direction, because, as I have said, the distance to the urethra at the level of the perineal body is rather small. And if you don't recognize that, it can look like this. That was something we did intentionally, just to demonstrate how that problem can end up. So you have got the mesorectum down there, prostate, a small bridge, and then you run into the urethra. So this is important. But of course, in females, you can get onto the back wall of the vagina, or if you have got pathological changes in the small pelvis, like this large enterocele, you can unintentionally in the abdominal cavity. So the second pitfall is this posterior angle. Because to do a proper mesorectal excision, you need to dissect the lower posterior mesorectum as well. And if you have got a specimen like this, with this rectangular shape of the lower mesorectum, then it can be a challenge to do a proper preparation along this line. The third point I want to address is something we have already spoken about. This is the rectosacral ligament. And of course, if we come back to this specimen, if you dissect along this way, you must not enter this space behind the ligament. And that can sometimes be rather difficult, because otherwise you will not enter the holy plane, but the planes behind the parietal pelvic fascia. This is the area which I refer to. Just this small space between the mesorectum and the inner lamella of the parietal pelvic fascia needs to be opened up. Otherwise, you can enter in this presacral space with the median sacral vessels, which might bleed quite heavily if you are unlucky. And the fourth point I would like to address are the nerves. This is our initial specimen. And now we look from below, and we can recognize the mesorectum there with the surgical dissection plane, very nicely to be seen, angel's hair. And there comes the pelvic splanchnic nerve entering the pelvic plexus or inferior hypogastric plexus, and from there all these nerves to the anterior organs and maybe the internal anal sphincter nerve derive. And there are, of course, rectal branches that run towards the rectum and that need to be cut as well, without damaging this nervous structure. If you go outside too much, then you end up behind the plexus and the pelvic autonomous nerves are destroyed. Once again, our schematic drawing, the dissection plane is there between the mesorectum and the inner lamella of the parietal pelvic fascia. So I come to my conclusion. It's quite simple. From above or from below, the views are different, but the anatomy is the same.
Exactly.
One quick question from me, if I might, first, Dr. Stelzner. You talked about the nerves of the internal anal sphincter. Do you think we're more likely to injure those going from below through tapne or from above?
You mean the way they function? Yeah. Okay, as it is with autonomic nerves, you can never tell from anatomical or histopathological investigations. They are there, we do not know their exact function, but we can hypothesize that there must be some kind of modulation of the internal anal sphincter, but so far we do not know about perceptive properties of the internal sphincter itself, so presumably there are only afferent properties, if you want to put it like that.
I do congratulate you on what I call Valdare, as you said, we British do.
Valdare I'm speaking about, but this layer at the back, which, and what I believe is, I am learning from watching very clever robotic surgeons, is that when it comes forward, it comes from about, as you say, S4, where it would appear to be the same as the presacral fascia, obliquely forwards, and then becomes adherent, as you show, to the mesorectal fascia. But as the robotic surgeons get cleverer and more accurate, I realize that it actually just becomes adherent to the mesorectal fascia for the distal few centimeters of the posterior mesorectal descent into the anal sphincters. And the careful guys can still stay inside that layer. And I think that this danger of going into the outer space from below, I've been watching this very carefully because I've been watching in my old age how people do TMEs from above and from below. And I think you've done a wonderful job in defining these spaces. And I think only my little postscript is what I've just said. I believe that layer's still there. And what I've been doing in about half my cases during my lifetime of TME teaching is going through what I've called the rectosacral ligament, which is the same layer, and actually dissecting in that outer space. But that happens to be a good deal safer when you go into it from above than it is when you go into it from below, as I will show in my talk tomorrow afternoon. But I think you've done a fantastic job.
Okay, and I think, thank you very much for these kind remarks. And I think it's a good forum to make clear that Waller's fascia is recognized differently in the English-speaking countries and in Germany. In Germany, the whole parietal pelvic fascia is referred to as Waller's fascia, and if the two communicate with each other, they do not understand each other because they speak of different structures, and so it is my and Tito's intention to leave happenings and to put correct nomenclature to the structures that everybody knows what we are speaking about.
I think we all know it better than Valdare did, that he was German and he more or less conquered the Rhineland, I think, and was a professor from Germany in Strasbourg, I believe. But I think you understand it better than he did.